Candidly, I think every company is going to need their own AI agent. That's going to be the way you interact with your customers. And I think it will be as important as your mobile app, as important as your website in just a few years. The short of it is I actually just really care about the mission of OpenAI, and which is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. And I think that's a really important mission right now. You talked about governance around AI. It's a really, really important question, especially for a research lab that's producing, I think, the cutting edge of research here.
Oh, and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Liz Dwoskin, Silicon Valley correspondent for the Post, and today we have two segments on generative AI. I'll be joined later by Lloyd, Dean of Stanford's Medical School, and Rebecca Mishuris, Chief Medical Information Officer at Mass General Brigham. We'll be discussing AI in medicine. But first, I'm pleased to be joined by Bret Taylor, Sierra co-founder and CEO, and chair of OpenAI. Bret, welcome to Post Live.
Great to see you, Liza. Thank you for having me.
To see you again, too. Before we begin, just a disclosure, Amazon Web Services is today's sponsor, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. So let's dive in. Bret, you and I have talked a lot about Sierra in recent months, and one thing that I keep feeling is this sort of kid in a candy store energy. You were the, I know you're smiling, you were the CTO of Facebook, you were the co-CEO of Salesforce, so you've had a lot of exciting jobs in Silicon Valley, and I've known you for a while, and your energy seems palpable now in a different way. Tell me why.
I am authentically excited about the impact of this next generation of AI on the world. When I graduated from university at Stanford in 2002, it was right at the beginning of the internet. The dot-com bubble had burst, but a lot of the companies that sort of define our consumer experience today, like Google and Amazon and Salesforce and other, had been founded and were sort of in the early days. This current generation of AI just feels like it will have a similar impact on society, on our lives. And I think as an engineer, which is really how I think of myself, it's just hard not to be just genuinely excited about the impact of this technology. With large language models, which is the underlying AI technology that powers things like ChatGPT, and I think started this wave of excitement. For the first time, we can really converse with computers in natural language, and they actually understand us in multiple languages with sarcasm, with nuance. It's remarkable. We can also generate text, images, video, understand text, images, and video. But more than anything, I think these models support some basic reasoning right now as well. And you combine the ability to talk to a computer, to generate text, images, and videos, to do basic reasoning. And I think the applications are just remarkable. It just feels like this next generation of computing and software, and it's just exciting to be a part of it. And it's exciting to help shape it and help shape how it'll impact our lives as consumers.
Can you share quickly, like your own kind of aha moment? Because like you said, you've been doing this since the dot-com era, so you've seen all the waves. What for you was the moment when you said, "Okay, this is something different"? Can you share a quick story?
I had two moments, and I'll share both. So the first was the first time I saw Dolly, which is OpenAI's image generation functionality. And I would believe it was in the summer of 2022. And I remember in that post about the announcement of Dolly, they generated, I think it was an avocado chair or something. It was some very goofy thing that didn't exist in the real world. But I remember seeing that and thinking, I had no idea computers were capable of doing this. And really recognizing, I think, just the breakthroughs that had happened since the introduction of the transformers architecture for AI and all that happened after. I think that was the moment that I really realized the impact. And then, like everyone else, when ChatGPT came out, and the conversations, really felt humane. They felt, like the conversations felt like a conversation with a person, and it really changed my perspective on the role of software and the way we interact. I'm happy. I don't want to go too far astray because I think you want to guide this interview, but I really think that the introduction of these large language models is a completely new platform capability for companies experimenting with software. To date, I think computers have been databases that store facts. They've been extremely fast rules engines where we predefine all the rules of the software, and thanks to Moore's law, they're more efficient and faster than ever before. And now with large language models, you have something that can be a creative foil. You have something that's extremely powerful, but also not deterministic and hard to predict, which introduces a lot of risk with these new technologies. It's really a completely new capability. For me, though, the aha moments were DALL-E and ChatGPT by far.
And it's yeah, a new paradigm for computing, but it's also a crowded space. So how does Sierra differentiate itself? I mean, especially the space of like c- AI conversation for customer service. It's one of the sort of lower hanging fruits of AI because you can train on just one company's database, which makes the conversation simpler in a certain respect. So how does Sierra differentiate itself?
I'll start with just the high level why I'm excited about this space, but I will definitely answer your question about how we stand apart. Our thesis is really simple, which is I think consumers go to the lowest friction and easiest way to communicate with you. So in 1997, that was your website, and that was the way that you could exist digitally. You'd list yourself on Yahoo directory and then eventually Google search, and that was the digital version of your brand. Fast forward to Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone in 2007, and many companies introduced mobile apps, and your mobile app became, for a lot of companies, your primary digital interface. We think that every company is going to need an AI agent, a branded conversational customer experience powered by AI. And we think for a lot of use cases, mobile apps didn't replace websites, but they certainly displaced a lot of usage. We think your conversational AI will end up one of the primary ways your customers want to engage with you. And we've really tried to focus on a few key areas to differentiate our platform. First is we want to enable every company in the world to deploy conversational AI, whether or not you have AI expertise in your company. So we're really trying to build a solution for consumer brands that doesn't require AI expertise to deploy. The second thing is we're really focused on unique technology. We actually just released a research paper last week that really analyzes the limitations of using some of these large language models off the shelf to power conversational customer experiences. And the short of that research paper is simply that it's really hard to produce something that's industrial grade and reliable. We've produced a platform, we call it Agent OS, just named after this idea of an agent that really adds the goals and the guardrails that you really need in place to have sort of industrial grade agents. So it's less likely to hallucinate, less likely to do something wrong, to really enable, I think, sort of these battle tested industrial grade experiences that brands expect. So I think it's when I look at the technology landscape, just think of the cloud as an example. You can lease servers in the cloud from an infrastructure as a service provider, or you can just buy a solution from a software as a service provider. We think the same thing will play out in AI, and we're really trying to provide an off-the-shelf solution so that every company can build their conversational AI.
The other day, McDonald's ended its AI drive-throughs, which was a partner with IBM after years of online videos showing all the hilarious mistakes it made, like ordering 200 McNuggets. Maybe that was just an issue with IBM, but what do you make of that?
100 McNuggets sounds pretty good to me. I it's a really interesting story, and there's been a handful of what I would say are these cautionary tales about the things that can go wrong with conversational AI. I'll start with the state of the technology. It's a really new technology, and it's not completely mature yet. And I think right now we're in the early phases of this adoption curve where brands are experimenting with conversational AI in their customer experiences, and things have and will go wrong. I still think there's a ton of benefit to it. If ask anyone waiting on hold for a response is not the most delightful experience. Similarly, if you think about some of your most recent customer service interactions, you probably will have a hard time thinking of a uniquely positive one. The experiences that a lot of brands are providing today are not great, and the opportunity of conversational AI is to provide something that has perfect access to your underlying systems, can be personalized to the person speaking to it, and more importantly, is 24/7 and always on. But I think it's really important to do responsibly. And I think, when you look at some of the cases, like I think I read a case where a conversational AI made up an airfare, hallucinated an airfare. You had the case you just mentioned with McDonald's. I think you really need to, roll these things out in a way where you're testing it constantly, rolling it out iteratively, and ensuring by the time you expand it to your entire customer base, it's something that's been hardened and industrialized. And, to be perfectly transparent, we're still in this sort of research and development phase with a lot of these agents. But I'm proud to say, the customers that we rolled out successfully, like Sonos and SiriusXM and Weight Watchers, I think we really reached that bar. But it's really important to do responsibly and recognize that this technology is not perfect, and when and how you
Right.
deploy
And
it
you,
really
right,
reflects the
exactly.
deliberate process.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's littered with cautionary tales. Sorry
Yeah,
to jump in. We have a bunch of questions that I definitely want
no
to get to
problem.
them in a short 20-minute block, which is one that OpenAI CTO Mira Murati recently said that some creative jobs will go away. It was a striking admission. And then she said, but maybe they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So we often hear, and I've heard it from you, that AI is just an amplifier of people's work. But just being real here, to what extent will this just replace a good number of jobs? And given what you're building, would you advise someone to go into customer service today?
It's a very nuanced and important question. And I think if you zoom out, and you look at the past, 200 years of technology adoption here in the United States, we've gone from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy to a services economy. And a lot of that has been driven by technology advancement. And I think that, if you look at even the past, 30 years, where you have the birth of the internet and the smartphone and how that's impacted jobs, we've seen a lot of both job displacement, but also new jobs emerge. And I think the same thing will likely happen with artificial intelligence. Some things will be automated because this next generation of technology affords the ability to automate, but also create new jobs. And one of the things that
Net,
we've
is it displacement? Brett, net, is it displacement? Because actually the story of the past 2 decades has been that net, it was displacement. That's why you see massive political movements in many countries, especially in ours, uprising over this very issue.
I believe in the long term, new jobs will be created as well. I think the uncomfortable part of this technology is how quickly the technology will be adopted and how quickly we as society can reskill into those new jobs. And I think if you look at sort of the adoption as an example of the automated teller machine in banks, that took I'm not an expert in this, but it took probably a decade, right? And so today, there's still, I think, just as many people staffing bank branches as there were, but they're doing different jobs. I think the challenge with generative AI is the adoption curve might be more rapid. So I think in the short term, it's almost certain there will be some displacement of jobs because the software is being adopted more rapidly than I think the reskilling cycle that's necessary to sort of with these new jobs will happen. But I think over the long term, I really believe, and again, that's why I felt it was important to sort of zoom out and look at even the economy of the US and how we've transformed over the years. I think new jobs will be created as well. And I think that I'm a real believer that this technology will drive productivity over time. I think it will really amplify our ability to do many new things that just weren't possible before. But I think that transition has always been hard. And I think, if you look back at the Luddites during the Industrial Revolution, you look back at, you look at the impact of globalization on the manufacturing base in the United States. These things are not easy. They're very complicated. So I don't mean to minimize it at all. But I am very optimistic about the positive impacts these technologies will have on society.
I'll ask a few quick ones. That Sequoia Capital recently said companies spent, I think, in 2023, $50 billion on chips from Nvidia, but the purchasers, the companies only brought in about $3 billion in revenue. So tell me why this isn't another bubble.
It may be a little bit of a bubble, but I'm going to just give you a thought exercise, Liza, and you can tell me whether you agree. I think, I was in college during the dot-com bubble, pets.com, Webvan, all the stories we talk about. You fast forward, 30 years from that moment, and you look at the, highest valued companies in the stock market with the, biggest impacts on our lives. And you have companies like Amazon, you have companies like Google, you have enterprise software companies like Salesforce, eBay, PayPal, all of these companies that were born in the dot-com bubble. With the benefit of hindsight, my intuition is that actually all the excitement in 1998 and 1999 at the peak of that bubble may have actually been warranted. And in fact, I think the economy did transform as much as even the most optimistic and frothy statements in that bubble. It doesn't mean that pets.com was an amazing company, but I do think that the impact was there. And my intuition is AI may have a similar trajectory. There will be snake oil salespeople, selling the hype. There will probably be too much investment too quickly in areas of the economy. But I think, again, if we fast forward 30 years from today, my strong intuition is that the impact of large language models, the impact of this next generation of AI probably will meet the hype over time. And it doesn't mean that any individual company does. It doesn't mean that every dollar being invested right now is being intelligently invested. But I really do believe in the impact over the long term.
It's a valuable thought experiment, and I see your point. It'll be a good op-ed too. What's the significance of the former NSA director recently joining the board of OpenAI?
As we think about building out the OpenAI board, we really think about our mission, which is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. And a key part of that is both safety and security. And Paul's a remarkable leader and obviously one of the world's experts in cybersecurity. And we really felt that having that voice represented on OpenAI's board would serve its mission.
What do you think? OpenAI right now is facing somewhat of a staff exodus. You also have a letter recently signed by current employees and former employees of OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepMind, Google's DeepMind, basically warning about the technology posing grave risks to humanity, from misinformation to even death caused by automation. How closely are you paying attention to, as a board, as the leader of the board, how closely are you paying attention to the arguments of those internal critics that the company is chasing profit at the expense of safety? Do those arguments have merit?
Well, I'll reiterate the goal of the board, the fiduciary duty of the board is really around our mission, which is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. And a big part of that mission is around safety and security and ensuring that, as these new technologies are developed, that safety is top of mind for every decision we make and how we develop the technology, how we release the technology. And I think it's vitally important that we as a board and the management team of OpenAI listen to everyone. I think there's very good critiques, very good ideas from all the stakeholders around OpenAI. And we have a very unique nonprofit structure that I think enables us to really be inclusive in who we listen to, how we engage with stakeholders, both within the company, outside the company, governments. And I think it's very important that we include all of those stakeholders and all of those voices. So I can't say I
So
read
you're
everything,
listening to the
a lot
critics.
of conversation up there, but I take it all very seriously.
Okay, so you're listening to the critics, you take it seriously. Are you making any change that you can point to? Are you doing anything different in response to those critics? Have you made any changes internally?
Um, I think just to characterize it, I'm not sure any of our actions are in response to like individual critics per se, but we're always investing in sort of the governance of OpenAI. Most recently, as an example, we created a safety and security committee of the board that we announced publicly that is both includes members of the board and members of management who are focused on alignment, safety, security. So I think as this technology evolves, I think we'll always be evolving both our governance structure and how we approach these technologies to ensure that we're meeting our mission, which I think is one of the most important missions in the world right now.
OpenAI has been inking deals right and left with media companies, have thrown a question about the media. And, there's a feeling, of course, that um, within the media industry that the AI companies, they ripped off and scraped our content for years. Now they're about to profit from it. Um, What's appropriate compensation when generative AI makes our brands disappear? And do you think that journalism can survive if everyone just goes to chatbots for news?
I can't speak to appropriate compensation of specific contracts as a board member. I'm not sure it'd be appropriate. I do think it's important as we think about our mission and the unique mission-driven structure of OpenAI that we really have these open dialogues with all stakeholders, about the appropriate use of data, how to engage those stakeholders, how to create a sustainable business model for the ecosystem around these models. So I'm proud of the partnerships OpenAI has done, but I don't really have any specific comments on it because I don't think it would be appropriate from the board.
What about more broadly though? Are you concerned about the survival of journalism if everyone goes to just like a chatbot for news and they can't even see necessarily what media company it comes from, the information comes from?
As a reader of four different newspapers every morning, I'm a deep believer in journalism, and I don't worry for its future. I think that journalism has survived many different technology and platform shifts, as you alluded to, Liza, and it's made the business model of journalism has certainly evolved. But the importance of seeking truth, the importance of providing that value to society, I don't believe will go away in any form.
This is my last question, which is according to the International Energy Agency, a chat GPT powered search actually consumes about 10 times the amount of electricity as a Google search. And, there's reports that even coal plants are being reinvigorated because of the AI boom. So, to what extent are you considering the climate impact without, some breakthrough innovation? Nuclear fission is being discussed. Yeah, how concerned are you about the climate impact in this AI arms race?
I think that the impact of the build out of data centers both before and after AI has always been, I think, an important area of focus, and it should be for every technology company as we think about the carbon footprint of technology and just the explosive growth of data centers as both the cloud and now AI is being built out. Um, I, I I really do believe in the power of innovation on this front. I believe that there's so many incredibly smart people working on new sustainable forms of electricity. I also think we're in the very early stages of AI, and I think a Moore's law like set of improvements on the efficiency of inference costs. The efficiency of models with fewer parameters that are more effective, the efficiency of new techniques that are more power efficient. I truly believe in it. And if you've looked at sort of the cost of using some of these large language models, they've become more effective and gotten cheaper over time. In the same way, when I was growing up, every time we got a new computer in the 90s, it was twice as fast and cheaper at the same time. And that was really due to these investments. So I do think it's an area of concern we should be concerned about. I also believe that there's the smartest minds in the world right now are innovating, and I really believe that those innovations will lead to something where the usage of the power is sustainable, that we're savvy about carbon footprint, and more than anything, this technology will continue to increase in its power and value to society.
You're a huge optimist, and it is true. The greatest minds of our generation are seems no longer making people click on ads, but they are doing this. Anyway, it's been a fascinating conversation. I wish I could ask you many more questions, but we are out of time, so we'll have to leave it there. Bret Taylor, thanks so much for joining the Washington Post today.
Thank you, Liza. It was a great conversation.
Up next, we'll hear how AI is shaping the future of healthcare with Dr. Lloyd Miner and Dr. Rebecca Mishuris. Please stay with us.
When the world of business is constantly changing, you need to stay ahead. So what about AI to generate new possibilities? Machine learning to predict what customers will like. Or expand your business by forecasting delivery routes with real-time data. With the most experience in the cloud, imagine how AWS can transform your business.
Hello, I'm Ruth Uma, leadership editor at Fortune. It's no overstatement to say that generative AI is data hungry and that data must be high quality in order to yield high quality results. Joining me today is Tom Godin, Director of Enterprise Strategy at AWS, to discuss how businesses can prepare their data for this transformative technology. Welcome, Tom. We are delighted to have you.
Yeah, Ruth, thank you so much for having me. An exciting topic, but also a very important topic for organizations to get right.
Absolutely. Well, first things first, Tom, what are the biggest challenges you see enterprises, companies face when trying to get value from generative AI?
That's a great question. You know, when I work with lots of enterprises and I'm having this conversation all the time with them, one of the first challenges that they have is just simply knowing what's possible with generative AI. What are the different ways that I could use it? How could I add value to my organization by using this exciting new technology? But along with that, then quickly comes an understanding of how do I manage this in a responsible way? How do I manage risk and put guardrails and be responsible about this? And then the third one is, you got to get your teams comfortable. We got to get them upskilled. We got to get them trained. We have to get them ready. But the biggest challenge just might be the data. See, data serves as the engine, it's the fuel, it's the driver for all these models. It helps these models comprehend and learn, and ultimately to generate new content with those human like capabilities that we've all been so excited and amazed by. Interestingly, though, what I found out from a survey that was just done by AWS, along with Tom Davenport, the CDO Agenda for 2024 survey found that over half of chief data officers have yet to make any changes to their company's data strategy to support generative AI, despite the majority agreeing the data strategy is crucial to getting value out of it. As a leader, it's critical for us to recognize that we need to build this strategy. We got to put the time in to get this right.
You say that leaders must zero in on the importance of a solid data strategy. So what is the importance of data? What role does this play, and why the emphasis on data?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's the fuel, it's the engine, it's the everything that makes this work. You know, world-class generative AI is simply not possible without world-class data. We've all heard the old analogy, garbage in, garbage out. You know, everyone has access to the same large language models. In fact, it's part of AWS's strategy to democratize generative AI and to put it in the hands of everyone. But if you want to stand out and make your applications know your customers and to be able to deliver specific trained answers, it comes down to having good data. And that good data helps with responsible AI and preventing hallucinations where your large language model proudly predicts it knows the answer, but does not have that correct response based upon an inaccuracy or a lack of training data provided to it.
Let's elaborate on this a bit more and make it really actionable. What steps then must leaders take to prepare their data for generative AI?
Yeah, so let's get down to it. So we are just scratching the surface. It's early days on this topic, but if I have to narrow it down, I'm going to narrow it down to a few things. And overall, I think they're relatively simple,
Yes,
but
just
they are
fine. Thank you.
important. The first one is you need to have a strategy to get that high data quality. You need to have automated processes for collecting and cleaning your data and managing your data
1, 2, 3, 4,
at
5,
scale.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Second, you need to have a robust data governance process, but a process that focuses more on governing by enabling people, by making it easy for them to use their data, and not by restricting. You see, it's common
Do
for
you want me to stay on?
organizations to want to lock away their data. Ask everyone, why do you need this? Make a
Okay,
case
I'll
for why
stay
you
on.
need this instead of just focusing on making it easy to
Okay.
use. See, we see modern successful organizations asking more of the question, why wouldn't I share this rather than why would I share this? The third thing is make it understandable and make it accessible to those that need it. I see organizations spending a lot of time as they try to get good, high quality data, say, we got to document this, we got to explain it, we got to have all this. And you do, but don't go overboard on that because that information overload It
One,
burdens
two, three,
people, and
four,
you think
five,
you're
six,
making
seven,
it
eight, nine,
clearer,
10.
you're making it more complicated. And the last one is don't boil the ocean. Let
Thank
value
you.
be your guide. You don't have to get every piece of your data in your organization organized, managed, cleaned, and prepared. Find that use case that you want to do. Find the data that you need for that use case and get that data organized and get that data ready, deliver value, and do it again.
Well, I agree that we're only just scratching the surface, which quite frankly makes this technology very exciting. However, many organizations still have a considerable amount of work to do in getting the right data foundation and data supply for Gen AI. Tom, thank you so much for your robust insights. And now back to the Washington Post.
Artificial intelligence continues to learn, and with generative AI, right, is taking on much more kind of what we have traditionally attributed to human capabilities, like generating new content.
The transformative aspects of generative AI can be broken down into several categories. One is making healthcare delivery more efficient and effective and equitable.
Silicon Valley correspondent for the Post, and I'm now joined by Lloyd Miner, Dean of Stanford's Medical School, and Rebecca Mishuris, Chief Medical Information Officer at Mass General Brigham. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Dr. Miner, we'll start with you. You've said that the application of AI in medicine is both overhyped and underhyped. Can you explain that for us? And what's most interesting to you now?
Well, first, I think in technology in general, we tend to overestimate what can be accomplished in the short term and underestimate what can be accomplished in the long term. I think, as I'm sure we'll talk about more during this segment, the potential of AI and generative AI in specific to really revolutionize the way healthcare is delivered, the way biomedical research is conducted, I think that potential is enormous. It's going to be some leaps, but it's also more fundamentally going to be a series of incremental steps. In terms of what's most exciting to me right now, one thing that has been relatively underexplored in comparison to other aspects of the applications of generative AI, at least with regard to medicine, is the application of generative AI in medical education, how that's going to change how we educate the next generation of doctors and how we make sure that as physicians, we're staying up to date with medical content that's evolving so rapidly. I think that's going to be a place where generative AI has enormous impact and an area that we need to focus on more than we have been thus far.
Dr. Miner, you're talking about the capacity that no physician today or physician in training can read the volumes of medical papers on any given topic. It's impossible, but AI can summarize it for them if it wasn't hallucinating.
That's right, and that's a big if and an important one to keep in mind. Also, although medical education has evolved over the past 25, 30 years, still fundamentally it's a knowledge-based educational program and it still relies upon a lot of memorization. I think we're getting better at introducing concepts. We're getting better at evaluating performance based upon reasoning from a common factual base. But still, given that we're going to have the opportunity to have more and more data available at our fingertips and data is being generated at an ever increasing pace, I think the role of the physician is going to become more in terms of interacting with patients, which it always should be, but also looking at how data can be rapidly accessed and applied to the specific condition that a patient is experiencing or the delivery needs of an individual or a community.
We talk a lot about how AI and generative AI is going to revolutionize healthcare in the future. I also remember when I was the big data reporter at the Wall Street Journal a decade ago, we talked about how big data and machine learning was going to revolutionize healthcare. Has it? And what is the best example of that happening right now, not in the future?
Sure. I think it certainly is beginning to, big data is beginning to have that sort of impact. Look, the places where big data driven AI is being applied today would be in areas like medical imaging. I think radiology, we're seeing a transformation in the way complicated medical imaging studies are being interpreted. Uh, the accuracy of those interpretations is being improved, and the efficiency with which those interpretations are provided is being improved as well. In pathology, although it's much earlier, we're starting to see signs of what I think will be even greater impact than in radiology in terms of being able to bring in data, far more data about a condition than any one pathologist or group of pathologists has seen, and apply that information to the interpretation of a slide of a surgical pathology specimen in ways that we simply can't today. But yes, I think we're seeing the effects of the positive effects of big data. We have far fewer medication errors today because we've moved to electronic prescribing, for example. Used to write orders and write prescriptions by hand. There was a lot of room for errors, and drug-drug interactions required someone knowing those interactions rather than those things being done automatically in the background every time an electronic order is written for a medication or a prescribed therapy. I believe the examples are there. Was big data overhyped? Perhaps, depending upon how you look at it, and again, what time frame you assume. But long term, I think these are transformational changes in biomedicine, all the way from discovery-based research up to the way we deliver healthcare.
Yeah, well, and we'll dive into some of those examples. Dr. Mishuris, I want to bring you in. Tell me about the AI pilot that you're overseeing right now, and what are you learning?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, and great to be here. So at Mass General Brigham, we currently have 800 of our physicians and advanced practice providers using artificial intelligence to help summarize their clinical visit. So a secure app on their phone or tablet listens to the clinical encounter with the patient and then summarizes that into a note in the electronic health record that looks remarkably like the note that I would have written myself, except that it's written in complete sentences, which I would never have done. And what we're finding actually is many things. First, that it's actually putting our providers back in the room with the patient. So I think for me, this is one of the very few, maybe the only times that I've seen technology actually improve the patient-provider interaction, where it's actually getting out of the way, right, and getting us back to the bedside, if you will. And so that's one huge benefit, both for our providers and for our patients who are noticing that our providers are no longer clacking away at the keyboard during their visit. I think one of the things that we really want to understand through piloting this newer technology is the impact that it has on our providers' burnout. Providers across the country are burning out at kind of unprecedented rates, right? Over 60% of physicians across the country report some element of burnout. And that's just an untenable situation, both for them personally and also for the delivery of healthcare to the population. And anything that we can do to eat away at that will be incredibly important. I think what we've seen is lots of different kinds of programs trying to address personal resilience, workplace features, and contributions to burnout from that. But there is no silver bullet to burnout. And so maybe this is another tool that we have to really kind of address burnout, particularly for our providers whose burnout is primarily or majorly from the documentation burden that we all experience.
Yeah, there's just too much data entry for providers, and there's so many different points where people can produce data now to even send to their providers, from medical records to text messages. And I think almost in every industry, but particularly in medicine, it's burning people out. I mean, it's burning into people's productivity. So we're definitely at a moment where we need the next wave of tools to now summarize that and understand it and make it simpler rather than just producing data and logging data, the database.
Absolutely. And kind of the next wave of this is how do we then get the data back out? We were just talking about the big data, right? And have we actually seen the promise of digitizing all of our old manila envelopes into the electronic health record? I would say we have not yet fully realized that. We're on our way, but we're not there yet. And if we can reduce the burden of getting the data into the system, can we then also reduce the burden of getting the data back out of the system when we need it to deliver clinical care, whether it's understanding what the potential treatment options are, or drug-drug interactions are, or what the next kind of therapeutic step should be, or diagnostic step should be for a patient? How do we then harness that data back out to make those kinds of clinical decisions?
See, I mean, look, there's great promise, but of course we're in a big fragmented and many would say system. So what do you see are the biggest roadblocks? Dr. Miner, what do you see as the biggest roadblocks to the implementation?
Well, you mentioned one big one, and that is that data about health is fragmented, and it's divided into different systems, and even within systems there are firewalls. Now, a lot of this is necessary because we absolutely have to protect the privacy of our patients. But how can we do that and still enable data to be more transferable? And how can we also make patients the true agents of how their data is being used? So I think that's definitely one impediment. The other is, and Liza, you mentioned it earlier on, and that is, we have to ensure against hallucinations, and we have to be able to detect them, because if a hallucination leads to, a fundamental error in the way care is being delivered, then that's a real problem in ways in healthcare that it is perhaps not as much of a problem in other industries or other aspects of the application of this technology. So I think those are two prominent limitations.
Dr. Mishuris, speaking of hallucinations, medical mistrust and misinformation has exploded since the COVID-19 pandemic. How concerned are you that AI is making this worse? What examples have you seen?
So I don't know that AI is making it worse, right? It's maybe bringing a different aspect to the table that didn't exist before. We have the potential for AI to actually dispel a lot of inaccuracies and rumors and things like that. But we have to guard against it, right? I think one of the biggest gaps we have right now actually is being able to monitor for hallucinations and inaccuracies in the content that particularly generative AI is putting back out there into the world. And that's kind of similarly true whether we're talking about chatbots or summarizing a clinical visit into a note. The chatbot that tells me how to get from point A to point B, or even summarizing the visit into a note, is not super high risk from a patient outcome perspective, right? From the quality of care and safety of the care that we're delivering. Although maybe in the note space, we start to edge into that safety space. But as we start to get into actual delivery of clinical care and trying to use AI, particularly again, generative AI, to help us with diagnostic and therapeutic decision making, that hallucination, that making up of information becomes incredibly important for us to identify and root out, because it will actually lead to quality and safety issues if we are not able to identify it and get rid of it. And so that ability to monitor for those hallucinations is a gap in the kind of industry today. And quite honestly, is why we're staying in these lower risk administrative burden spaces for now. There's lots of research going on to bring us into the more clinical and higher risk areas, but those things are not being used in practice and certainly not scaled yet.
That's my worry too, that especially in medicine, the margin of error is so small. We were just talking to Bret Taylor earlier, who is working in customer service. If you make a mistake, it's very different than if you make a mistake in a healthcare context.
Absolutely.
Dr. Miner, you've talked a bit about your excitement for the promise of biomedical research, and I wanted to chat about bias, that this risk of AI perpetuating biases that already exist in medical research, because it's going to oversample overrepresented populations and undersample underrepresented populations. I can even you mentioned the examples of radiology. If there's a small or dermatology is also a field that's being transformed by AI. But if you just have a corpus of data that trains on lighter skin, you're not going to catch skin ailments. AI is not going to catch skin ailments from darker skin, and especially on the imaging contrast issues for darker skin. My understanding is that's a big deal. What are your concerns there about bias, and how do you see schools like yours working to guard against that in the experiments you're doing?
I think the concerns are real and the concerns are valid. And the AI is only going to be as good as the data on which the models are trained. And if that data used to train the models is biased because it's not inclusive, it's not representative, and then because the model has been trained on data not inclusive and not representative, it leads to erroneous conclusions when it's applied to patients, to situations that it's had no experience before, then that's a big problem. We have to focus. We're certainly doing it. I think every major center is doing it. We have to focus in clinical trials to make sure that there's diverse and equitable representation and participation in clinical trials. We have to make sure that data are identified based upon their source, particularly when, as you mentioned, the example of dermatology, when that can have a major impact on the conclusions that are derived from an AI model that's trained on data. So I do think that this is going to be a current limitation, because the fact is we generally don't have large, truly representative data sets for healthcare in this country because of the historic underrepresentation of underrepresented groups in clinical trials and other key studies.
Dr. Mishuris, we have a question from the audience. Peter Altschuler from California asks, what areas of AI assistance in healthcare do you consider most promising?
It's a great question, and you could go in so many different ways. I think within healthcare, we are clearly seeing the potential for AI to improve some of the administrative burdens we have, like writing notes, like writing prior authorization letters, like helping patients figure out how to get from point A to point B across our incredibly complicated healthcare campuses. And so I think there's real promise there, right? There's real promise in something that Bret Taylor was talking about earlier, actually, in contact centers, right? In order to get an appointment at a healthcare provider, you either have to do that through their online portal, or you have to call in and get that appointment. And so when you call in, we have the potential to offload some of those less complex calls to IVR, to a chatbot, essentially, and save our human contact center employees for the more complex issues that need to be handled. I think that one thing that I am really excited about that Lloyd was just talking about is actually the potential for AI to help us with reducing inequities in healthcare. We know that there are inequities in healthcare outcomes across this country by race, by language, by gender. And could we actually use AI to reduce those inequities and address them? And you have to start with a diverse data set to train on. But even in a diverse data set, we know that there are still inequities in outcomes. And so you have to go kind of 2 steps further. The first step is, as you look at the output of the models, to actually retrain and retune the model to perpetuate more equitable outcomes than what we see in real life. So that's step 1. And then step 2 is actually, how do we make these tools accessible to all healthcare providers, to all patients across this country, and quite honestly across the world, where right now the tools are incredibly expensive and really kind of inaccessible to many under-resourced or lower-resourced healthcare organizations, even in this country. And so we are potentially leaving out a whole swath of care teams and patients from being able to take advantage of what, some of which at least, will prove to be highly useful tools. And so how do we make sure that we're actually able to get the tools into the hands of the people that might even use them, where the impact might be outsized from some of the rest of us.
Dr. Miner, I have a very quick question because I want to get to one last audience question, which is, you're the co-lead of Raise Health. It's a joint initiative between Stanford Medicine and the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. It's all about responsible AI in medical care. What role should the government play in establishing those guardrails?
I think the government has a very important role in establishing the guardrails. And in a number of our initiatives under the umbrella of Raise Health, we have active participation from members of the Office of National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, the FDA, and other government agencies. First, I want to say I'm really impressed by the quality of people working in those agencies, by their desire to collaborate with and learn from academic medical centers and other institutions so that they can perform their roles as regulators and designing the guidelines and the compliance standards in a way that truly protects the public and enables the benefits of AI to be applicable for all.
I have a final audience question to close on. Laura Lang, also from California, asks Jensen Huang. He is, of course, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA. Frequently states that AI will make medicine move from science to engineering. What do you think? What do you think of that? Dr. Mishuris would love to hear from you quickly, and then quickly from Dr. Miner. We would love to hear it.
I suspect that the comment is related to what Lloyd was talking about earlier, which is moving us from data aggregators, data acquirers, to actually being able to put all the data together. I'm not sure that that's engineering, though, right? That is clinical knowledge, that's clinical acumen, and it's not the memorization of facts that we do in medical school today. And in fact, I think medical school probably has to evolve as the technology evolves, because the memorization of facts will be very different, or the need for memorization of facts will be very different. And what we actually will need to do is to be able to put the data together and really understand how all of the different pieces of data, what questions we need to ask of them, and how do we come out with a differential diagnosis and a treatment and evaluation plan. That's very different than how we're taught, at least at the outset, right? That's what we learn over time as we start to practice medicine, and we need to move that earlier into the education.
I think Rebecca said it really, really well. I would just add, yes, I agree. I think maybe that Jensen's comment was that it moves physicians and other health providers to being problem solvers and thinking of engineers as problem solvers. And Rebecca described that really well. I also think and hope that it'll enable physicians and other health providers to really get back to interacting with and relating to their patients, and take away a lot of the documentation burdens that Rebecca spoke about earlier, and that really are a major cause of physician burnout.
Well, my takeaway from this fascinating conversation is that's what I'm most excited about, too, the administrative burden. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Dr. Rebecca Mishuris and Dr. Lloyd Miner, thank you both for joining us on Washington Post Live.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. Please sign up for a Washington Post subscription and get a free trial by visiting washingtonpost.com/live. I'm Liz Dwoskin, and thanks again.